Behind the headlines series. Things are, as always, extremely lively in this part of the world. For those of you who are here in Israel, I don't need to explain. For those of you who are not in Israel, I'll say two things. First of all, follow the news. And second of all, don't believe what you read. Be very, very selective about your sources of news. At the end of this presentation, there will be a list of ways where you can follow Regavim and get our take on important developments in the news, updates on our activities, updates on our court cases and other things like that, reactions to things in the news stream. So keep your eyes peeled for the very last screen in this presentation if you want to learn more. In addition, there'll be a scan code on the very last page that will allow you to go straight to Regavim's website homepage and sign up for our newsletter. Another option, if you want to contact us, is always contact me directly. My email is always available, and my address is easy to remember, naomi@regavim.org. So with all that having been said, I'd like to dive right in. Tonight's topic is a new topic. The topic is Jerusalem, Reunited, Redivided. And the reason that I chose this topic is because Regavim has now officially jumped into the fray in Israel's capital for the first time, applying the same methods and the same techniques and the same types of activism that we have used everywhere else in the country, but have refrained from applying full-time in Jerusalem. For many, many years, we conducted our business in Jerusalem simply on an ad hoc basis, meaning if any of the organizations, the many organizations that are active, excuse me, in Jerusalem, called us in, asked for our assistance, pointed out a case that was not in their purview or something that they felt we should be addressing, either a particular incident of illegal construction or a larger picture of a failure of governance, we would get involved. And I will talk about some of those cases this evening. But I'm happy to report that this year we began, for the first time, we hired a full-time Jerusalem field coordinator, the same as we have a full-time field coordinator for Judea and Samaria, for the northern section of the country, for the southern section of the country. We're now focusing on Jerusalem with equal intensity as all other parts of the country. And there are some things that I wanted to impart really about our work in Jerusalem to give you a framework in which we can put the rest of our activities as we go along. We have a very, as always, Regavim has an extremely, let's say, particular agenda. We try not to have what's called mission creep. We don't get involved in things that are beyond our areas of expertise. So we try to focus on very specific aspects of Zionist land use policy as they apply in Jerusalem. So we're going to have a look at some slides this evening. By the way, enjoy this picture. This was a pre-COVID Birkat Kohanim, or I don't even remember when it was, but it was a few years back, and it's a pleasure to look at. So the challenges on Regavim's agenda are essentially the things that we have identified, ongoing battles that have taken on new volume or new perspective. Now that we have new resources to apply to them, we would like to move them forward. So I'm going to discuss what they are. Essentially, there are 5 topics this evening. The first is, and the most basic of all, is land registration and regularization. If you don't know who is the owner of a piece of property, nothing good will come of it. If there is no legal registration of land, you are opening the door to constant conflict, to all sorts of problems that we have seen in Jerusalem for years, for decades, as a matter of fact. So the words that you see at the bottom of the screen, the Mukhtar Protocol, are not only a symptom, but a cause of much of Jerusalem's problems. Through a very, very brief history lesson, much of the land of Jerusalem is not registered, meaning there has never been a proper survey and land registry conducted. There is a land registry that exists. It was in the hands of the Ottoman Empire, given over at a certain point, and the Jordanians have a particular land registry as well. Neither one of those is really, neither complete nor reliable. And to make matters worse, the Ottoman land registry, as it applies everywhere in Israel, in the land of Israel, was held in Istanbul, and was people could apply for proof of ownership to Istanbul, but there was a very famous, I would say infamous, industry of forgeries. So people were getting all sorts of land registry documents from the Ottoman registry that were clearly, they were contradictory. So two people could come on the same day with documents that 100% contradicted one another because they were both forgeries. So there were all sorts of forgeries going on, and there were all sorts of problems with that. But to make matters worse, it was eventually handed over. The Jordanians and the Ottomans handed over the land registry to the Palestinian Authority. So the state of Israel has very, very limited access to those documents, but even those documents are very, very incomplete and inaccurate. So how was land ownership determined by the state of Israel up until 2022? In Jerusalem, even though it is the unified capital of the state of Israel, the state of Israel employed a technique for establishing ownership of property in Jerusalem that does not exist anywhere else. And that is called the Mukhtar Protocol. Essentially, when someone wanted a permit to build, to expand, to buy or sell a piece of property in Jerusalem, they would go to the Jerusalem authorities and they would say, well, the Mukhtar, the chieftain of my village, because many of the Arab neighborhoods of East Jerusalem began as independent villages and were incorporated inside municipal Jerusalem. So they would go to the Jerusalem authorities with the testimony of their local chieftain, who would say, yes, this piece of land has belonged to X family or Y family for generations, etc., etc. The state of Israel allowed this Mukhtar testimony to replace any registry, any registration, any proof of ownership, any proof of inheritance, any legal document whatsoever, and was taken simply on face value as truth. What happened more often than not is that the testimony provided by these Mukhtars turned out to be just as false could be. So this was a problem where Arab owners, rightful owners, were being cheated of their own property by their own people, and the Jerusalem municipality was complicit, or Jews were losing, and the Jewish people were losing massive amounts of land, property, and other assets because the Mukhtar said it belonged to someone. In many, many cases, there were actual registrations in the Israel National Land Registry of some of these properties. But because the Mukhtar said that it belonged to person X, the Jerusalem authorities never even checked. So we went to court against the Mukhtar Protocol. We protested against it. We lobbied against it. We worked against it. We worked very, very hard. We worked with the Ministry of Justice. We worked for years to point out the injustice that was being caused by this bizarre protocol. And eventually, under the previous Minister of Justice, the Mukhtar Protocol was struck down and on paper. Unfortunately, at this point, the proper registration and regularization of the land in Jerusalem, which would require a full survey and registration on the cadastre system, a very specific way of researching and registering land ownership, has not begun for political reasons. So although we have managed to discredit the bizarre practice that was in place before, we have not managed to jumpstart the proper process that should be taking its place. So we're working very hard on that. And I will just point out that the survey and registration of land in Jerusalem is not unique, or the lack of such. Most of the land in Judea and Samaria is in the exact same situation. So we have a very serious problem maintaining the peace and allowing people to protect their proprietary rights. We also have a major problem in terms of development, because as we have seen too many times in the past, when the state of Israel contends that something is public land and gives permission to build a new community on it, and then somewhere down the line, at any point in history, could be decades later, someone shows up and says, well, my family planted trees on that land 170 years ago, and therefore it's mine, and you have to knock down the entire neighborhood. And that has happened, of course, only to Jewish neighborhoods, not to Arab neighborhoods. But the problem of a lack of legal registration, survey registration and regularization of property in Israel is a massive problem that Regavim is at the vanguard of trying to make progress here for everyone's benefit. So the second issue that we're dealing with is closely related, but not related. And here, what you see in front of you is a neighborhood in Jerusalem. The picture that you're looking at is a picture of 100% illegal construction. Every single thing that you see in front of you here is illegal. Now, you'll notice at the bottom of the picture, there's a wire fence, and then beyond it, there's a concrete barrier. That is our world-famous security barrier. Or if you're a leftist from Peace Now, it's called the apartheid wall. The buildings that you see are in Jerusalem, but they are on the other side of the security barrier. And the state of Israel has a tremendous black hole of enforcement in the Arab neighborhoods beyond the wall, beyond that security barrier. So what you're looking at here, in some cases, are 16-story buildings that are built with absolutely no oversight, no engineering oversight, no earthquake standards, no bomb shelters, no proper electricity hookups. Who knows where the sewage is going? In a few minutes, I'll show you where the sewage is going. There are no streets. There is no garbage collection. This is municipal Jerusalem, and it is no man's land. So Regavim has decided to actually take this bull by the horns. It is a massive, massive problem. There are people who've been living in some of these structures for 20 years, and the state of Israel has completely ignored all the problems that are caused by it. So these structures, if any of you have traveled on Route 1, leaving Jerusalem towards Malign, and you see these massive structures as far as the eye can see, all the way between from the outskirts of Jerusalem, all the way through Kfar Aqeb, all the way to the old Atarot airport. All of these massive structures are problematic in more than one way. Aside from the environmental disaster that they're causing and the planning disaster, they are also shifting the demography of Jerusalem. Again, these are municipal Jerusalem, and Israel is closing its eyes and making believe this is all not there. But the Palestinian Authority is moving people in. So you have thousands and thousands of people for whom the Palestinian Authority, whom the Palestinian Authority encourages to move into municipal Jerusalem. At the moment, Jerusalem Arabs do not vote in municipal elections, but that's only because the Palestinian Authority forbids them to do so. If tomorrow the Palestinian Authority feels that it has moved enough Arabs to shift the demography of Jerusalem significantly enough, it will allow people to vote. And all these people have the right to vote if they can prove Jerusalem residency. And therefore, they can simply take over Jerusalem or the municipality of Jerusalem under democratic system even though these people have no legal address, they have a physical address. And the state of Israel has done nothing to address that possible problem, aside from all the other problems that all of this causes. The neighborhoods that look like this, the neighborhoods that were built in this way, are hotbeds of crime. There's a massive drug trade. There's smuggling of all sorts, tremendous amounts of violence, because they're exterritoria. There is no law there. The Palestinian Authority certainly isn't there, and the state of Israel is conscientiously not there. So we are demanding that the state of Israel reclaim governance in Jerusalem. That's the second of our issues. I will show you, for example, we'll go back one, this building that we're looking at over here. This is a file that we've prepared. And this is, for those of you who are new to Regavim, I will explain exactly what this is all about. The way Regavim works is we prosecute through the bureaucracy and up all the way to the courts, exemplar cases that prove a larger point or illustrate a larger phenomenon. We can't go to court against all of the thousands and thousands of illegal structures that we're looking at. So we choose one that is typical of the problem in order to explain to the public what the problem is, to educate our public officials, and to set precedent for future cases. So the building that we're looking at, that we looked at from the front before, this is an aerial view of that same building. We get all the information on it. We have the exact coordinates of it. We know exactly when people began to move in, how long it took them to build, and of course, whether or not there were any permits issued. Notice all these water cisterns on the roof. And from this view, you can't really see it, but there are no paved streets. This is all just dirt all around it. So there is obviously no room for garbage collection here. There is no room for proper sewage. There is no room when things are built this way to build normal schools, health clinics, or any of the other things that Jerusalem residents are entitled to. And it's a disaster in the making. These are areas in which the Israel police do not enter. They're attacked if they do, but there's more and more of them. So this, So this is an aerial view. This is a street view, and we collect all of these. This is the building we were looking at down here on the left. And this is just one of many, many, but we chose this one. Notice this stripe here, that's the security barrier. But this, all of it is inside the municipal lines of Jerusalem. So we kind of throwing something over the back fence kind of philosophy is what Israel has done in this part of Jerusalem for many, many years. But as I mentioned, the problem isn't only an issue of the structures themselves and what they're used for. The problem also is the environmental impacts. So this is Jerusalem, and this is a pirate garbage dump. Look at what it looks like. I'll show you some more views of it. But they're simply all these illegal structures, and more of them, as you can see here, are going up all the time. They don't have garbage collection. They don't have any semblance of order here. There's no streets. There's no anything. So all the garbage is simply dumped. This is the exact location, and you can see that this is the green line. All of this is inside Jerusalem. And this is the Atur neighborhood. Azaim is here, which is also part of municipal Jerusalem. This is pixelated because it is in an IDF installation. So we're not allowed to publicize any actual images of that. But the environmental impacts of all of this are leading to massive pollution in Jerusalem and beyond. This is what it looks like: raw, untreated residential and industrial waste. And I can show you dozens of pictures of this. But then what happens to it is this: they simply set it on fire. So everyone within miles is breathing in toxic smoke because the trash is simply burned. This is not a sustainable model, let's put it that way. So Regavim has tried to approach the question of illegal construction from at least 4 different vantage points. One of them is the environmental, the other is the social and political. The third is simple enforcement of the law in terms of construction and building codes. And the fourth is to try to paint a bigger picture that forces the government of Israel to formulate a vision for the future of Jerusalem, which it has not apparently done. The next topic that we are approaching now in a much more concentrated fashion since we began our full-time engagement in Jerusalem is to push back against foreign actors that are extremely active in Jerusalem. Now, much of what we're going to say in the next few minutes has more people know about what's going on in Jerusalem than, and think that it's happening only in East Jerusalem. It's not. And we'll see some pictures about that as well. But I'm not sure how many of you are aware, after many years of campaigning and protests and actual lawsuits, the government of Israel finally, in the aftermath of October 7th and all of the revelations of the active involvement of UNRWA staff in the atrocities committed by Hamas, in the complicity in terrorism inside Gaza and outside Gaza, and finally the admission that UNRWA, which controls all of the Palestinian schools, is teaching terrorism, anti-Semitism, racism, misogyny, and violence. Israel finally notified UNRWA only about 2 weeks ago, maybe a little more, that it now must vacate all of the premises in which it is operating in Jerusalem. Now, take a step back for a moment. UNRWA is a branch of the United Nations. It is the United Nations relief and work agency that is exclusive to Palestinians. It has single-handedly grown the Palestinian refugee population from a few 100,000 in 1948 to many millions today, over 5 million, they say. More than that even, probably 7 million, 9 million. It's the only growing refugee population in the world. UNRWA has completely unique criteria for refugeeism. Even if you have citizenship in another country, even if you were born and raised in another country as a citizen and the child of a citizen, even the grandchild of a citizen, you are still considered a Palestinian refugee by UNRWA. And they get massive funding. We'll see how much in just a moment. But UNRWA has consistently taught Palestinian children that they have not only the right, but the expectation of retaking all of the land of Israel from the river to the sea. UNRWA shares that view, teaches children that Yafo, Akko, Tel Aviv, Haifa, Ra'anana, not just Jerusalem and Hebron are Palestine. So the Israeli government has allowed UNRWA to use in some cases, historic structures, but in all cases, state-owned real estate to operate in Jerusalem. They have not paid taxes. They have all the benefits of a charitable organization with international support. And the state of Israel has ignored all of UNRWA's activities until now. So UNRWA was just notified that it has to vacate all Israeli state-owned premises in Jerusalem, pack up and go somewhere else. So it wasn't a big deal because they have lots of other places to go. Their field office for this entire area is actually in Gaza. They have one in Gaza and one in Ramallah, and they have lots of offices all over the place. They have offices in Jordan and in Syria and in Lebanon, where they maintain the Palestinians in refugee camps, even though they're already third, fourth, in some cases, fifth generation, and with limited rights in their host countries. So UNRWA has just been given the boot out of Jerusalem, which is a huge step, and we intend to make sure that that actually happens, and that UNRWA actually is required to pay all of the back taxes that it owes to the state of Israel, which amount to many, many millions of dollars. Another malign actor that Regavim has been working against for many years is the UNTSO. This is a less well-known arm of the United Nations. UNTSO stands for the United Nations Treaty Supervision Organization. And this is absolutely hysterical. The UNTSO was placed in Israel by the United Nations to oversee the implementation of the armistice agreement, the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Jordan in 1948. Now, you may well ask, why are they still here? And why does a UNTSO still exist if there is no longer a ceasefire, but a full international peace treaty between Israel and Jordan? Well, that's a very good question. We have no answers. We have no idea what they're doing, but we certainly know where and how they are doing. They're doing very, very well at our expense. So the pictures that you see here, first of all, you see this actually historic document on the right. These are the original plans of the area registered as Israeli state land that was given over to the UNTSO to use as headquarters in 1948. Before that, it had been the house of the High Commissioner, and therefore it was only natural that they allowed the United Nations to stay there to monitor the treaty as they said they did. The problems begin much later on. The problems begin when we have a look at, in this map, this is the original area that is reflected in that historic document. That is the area that was handed over for their use. They were there as tenants, as guests. So like any good guest, you try this next time someone hosts you, we'll see how far it gets you. They doubled the size of the area they were given to use. They destroyed, through renovations, the historic buildings in which they were housed. And they installed an illegal gas station, a petrol station, for their own use. And they refused to allow the Israeli authorities to inspect either the historic buildings, the property, the environment, or to reclaim any of this real estate for its own use. So the yellow lines are the expansions that they have taken. And if any of you aren't aware, Armon HaNatziv, this is the, on the left, this is what the compound looks like now from an aerial view. They have put in tennis courts, they have put in gardens, they have put in warehouses, storehouses. This is some of the most expensive, most prime real estate in all of Jerusalem. And they're simply there. And who knows what they're doing there. They shouldn't be there at all. And if they are there, they certainly should not be renovating or changing in any way historic structures. And they shouldn't be putting in petrol stations that could quite likely poison the soil forever. And they should also be paying for not only rent, but taxes. So we've been working against this compound for a very long time. We hope that after UNRWA is properly disposed of in Jerusalem, that UNTSO will be next. Another malign actor, which many of you may not be aware of, is the Turkish government. The Turkish government has become extremely active in Jerusalem. It has a governmental aid agency, just like the Americans have USAID. This is TIKA. They also fund, the government itself funds a wide array of nonprofits. Nonprofits that send over tourists and volunteers. The last murderous terrorist attack in Jerusalem's Old City earlier this year was carried out by one of these Turkish tourists, who also happens to be a Muslim Brotherhood affiliated preacher and inciter at the Temple Mount. He was arrested, and now Israel has this whole diplomatic issue about what to do with him. But be that as it may, the Turks have funneled tens of millions of dollars into initiatives to enhance their influence on and around the Temple Mount. They are trying to take control. The Waqf is Jordanian, and there's a whole power struggle there. They have brought Hamas, which at the time was a way of getting rid of the Palestinian Authority, but now it's not at all clear. The Muslim Brotherhood and Turkey and the Turkish government are one and the same, essentially. And the northern branch of the Islamic movement, with all of its affiliated terrorist arms, are all funded directly by the Turkish government. So they're very, very active in the old city. If you walk through the old city nowadays and you look at the plaques on the sides of newly renovated buildings, very, very often you will see plaques that have the Turkish flag on them. The Turkish government is incentivizing the Arabs of East Jerusalem and buying them out, getting them on their side, and in addition, filling the area just absolutely chock-a-block with radical, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, quote-unquote tourists and volunteers. So we are trying to mitigate that situation. We are trying to also force the government of Israel not to issue visas as tourists to people who aren't tourists. And everyone knows they aren't tourists. Another malign actor that we are up against, and it's not the first time, is the European Union. The picture you're looking at here is actually Khan al-Ahmar, which is just outside Jerusalem. That is on your right here, that's Route 1, the highway that leads to Jerusalem. This is one of over 80 such illegal outposts that are funded. They were created essentially by the European Union. And in a moment, you're going to see a picture that brings some of these strands together. The organization that built the infamous school at Khan al-Ahmar, which is right here under these trees, is an Italian NGO called Vento de Terra. Keep that name in mind for one more minute because they're back. This is what European Union is up to in and around Jerusalem. This is in Jerusalem, by the way. This is Jerusalem. This is their European Union symbol. You see it on all of these prefab structures that they put all over the place to try to block Jerusalem off from its own eastern border. You will note European Union activity. Anyone recognize what this is? This is Hebrew University, the famous Hebrew University Tower. This is the law school of Hebrew University right here. This is an EU-funded tractor that came to do work on the other side of this slope of Mount Scopus, Har HaTzofim, and was intercepted. But there's massive European Union activity in and around Jerusalem. Some of it looks extremely innocent. This is the picture that comes on the front page of the FAIR project. FAIR is one of the biggest projects of the United Nations / EU in Jerusalem. So this is a mobile clinic, and note once again who's involved: Vento de Terra. This picture, unfortunately, to make it fit in this slide, I cut off the background a little bit, but the background is actually the security wall, the same security wall. This is inside Jerusalem. And they skirt around the inside of the security wall, even though they are well inside Jerusalem, providing quote unquote humanitarian aid. And you see all of the same actors again and again, trying from all sorts of different directions to get a foothold in Jerusalem. And they're managing very, very nicely. So this FAIR program is one of the United Nations programs in the occupied Palestinian territories, right? The UN allocated in 2019 alone over $420 million. That doesn't include COVID, special funding for COVID. The FAIR program, $420 million a year. And here's their mission statement: supporting Palestinian statehood in Jerusalem. In addition, there are multi-million-dollar projects for obtaining land rights for Palestinian statehood in Area C, not just outside of Jerusalem, or the area surrounding Jerusalem. So what I'm going to do now is click on this link here, if I can, if it'll work, to show you their website I'm not making this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. It's not working. No, it's blocking it because I'm in the middle of this presentation. But anyone who's interested in seeing their budgetary reports and the program project reports, write to me and I'll send you all the links, or we can send it out in an email. The amounts of money that are going into this are shocking, and each time we turn over a rock, we find another multi-million-dollar project. They don't ever anywhere put up a list of all of the projects to aid the Palestinians. Each one comes from a different side. You have food security support for Jerusalem. You have water and sanitation and hygiene. You have education, of course, and you have refugees, and you have indigenous farmers, and you have women's rights, and you have dozens and dozens and dozens of projects that are all active in Jerusalem. And these are people who are living in Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel, and are being funded by programs that are created to support Palestinian statehood in Jerusalem. Something's wrong with this picture. Another area that we are becoming involved in more aggressively now is protection of antiquities in Jerusalem, and there are a lot of them. This picture here is fairly recent. It is construction work at Givat HaMatos, and at the same time, the largest section of the ancient aqueduct that carried water all the way from Gush Etzion through Solomon's pools, all the way to the Temple Mount, was uncovered in this area. This is just to give you an idea of the size and the grandeur of archaeology projects that are still to be done in Jerusalem. The picture you see here on your right is the reconstruction of the actual floor of the Beit HaMikdash, the temple itself, the Jewish temple, in the sifting project that is sifting through the truckloads and truckloads, hundreds of tons of debris that the Muslim Waqf illegally removed from the Temple Mount and unceremoniously dumped in a valley, in the Kidron Valley. Pieces of these tiles were discovered, and artists and archaeologists and researchers from around the world have actually acclaimed the work that was done at the sifting project to reconstruct what the floor of the Beit HaMikdash looked like. So take a good look. There are different colors that come together, and when they put a whole slab of it together, it makes a pattern that actually looks like it's moving. It's an optical illusion that is absolutely breathtaking. Some of the coins here that have been found in areas underneath garbage dumps. The Palestinian Authority, I will try to move this for you, I can't actually, oops. The Palestinian Authority is making concerted effort to erase the record of the Jewish connection, not only to Jerusalem, but to all of Judea and Samaria. This is an area that we're very actively involved in, but the state of Israel has done almost nothing to protect the archaeology in its own capital city. This leads us directly to the fifth and final topic that we are addressing, and that is a case or a project that we took on many years ago to try to protect the slopes of Mount Scopus that lead up to the Temple Mount, coming from the direction of the desert, from Ma'ale Adumim. In the distance, you see the Dead Sea, and all of this area is being encroached upon by Palestinian Authority outposts funded by the Europeans. You have all sorts of things that start off looking like an innocent Bedouin shack, and they turn into quote unquote historic villages practically overnight. And this is inside Jerusalem on Mount Scopus. There is no doubt that this is one of the most strategic locations, and that there is a massive amount of archaeology that needs to be excavated here. It was a pilgrimage path up to the Temple Mount, and every time anyone takes a plastic spoon and digs half an inch under the surface, all sorts of finds come up. So in order to protect this area, to protect Israel's capital strategically, and to protect the archaeological and natural resources that we have here. Regavim had spearheaded years ago a campaign to turn this entire area into a national park that essentially creates a belt of untouched land around the outer slopes of Mount Scopus, leading up to the Temple Mount. So we're working very hard on making some progress with this. We have managed to get through several of the planning hurdles, and there's tremendous pushback by the various churches who understand full well the importance of this territory. And for some reason, the churches object to Israel preserving this pilgrimage route and the area that creates a band around the Temple Mount. I think you can figure out the reason for yourselves. So that is, in a nutshell, all 5 of the main areas that Regavim is active in now in Jerusalem. We are creating a 5-year plan that will take us through the steps, actual practical steps, legislative steps, legal steps, all the things that need to be done in which order in order to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves in each of these 5 areas. So it's very new and very exciting. We have a wonderful new field coordinator, an extremely energetic young man named Yehuda Noam. Anyone who's interested in seeing any of these things for themselves, next time you're in Israel, don't wait till you get here. Be in touch with me ahead of time, and I'll be happy to take you out on a field tour to see exactly what it is that we see and what we're doing about what we see. There's a tremendous amount of work to be done to save Jerusalem, and we are honored to be part of that process. So I'm going to show you this final slide, as I promised. If you are so inclined, you can scan this QR code with your phone right now. It will take you to our website, which is a tremendous resource for everything that we do, has all of our reports, has media updates, will soon have a page on which all of our previous webinars on all the subjects that we've covered will be posted, but for now it's only on YouTube. We're working on that. But these are all the ways that you can follow Regavim. We have a very active WhatsApp group, Telegram. We're active on Twitter, which is actually not called Twitter anymore. It's called X. We are active, very active on Facebook and Instagram. We put up video clips, explanatory clips, all kinds of things. We just put up a very interesting one right now about the drug trade down in the Negev and where it's happening. I urge you to have a look at that. It's fascinating stuff. And as always, if you want to get more information about any of these things and you don't find a solution on our website, if you click on the homepage, contact us and write in English, it will automatically come to me. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or you can simply reply to the registration emails that you're getting from Friends of Regavim announcing these webinars. They will also come to me. These are all ways that you can make contact, ask questions. We appreciate suggestions. We get hot tips from people all the time when they look out their window here in Israel and see illegal construction going on. And we come out and check it out and try to keep a handle on that. In addition, I will say that anyone who's interested in donating to Regavim, you can click on the donate button on our website or go to JGive. JGive at the moment is giving us a problem. It's not accepting dollar donations. So any of you who are in the United States who want to donate by credit card, there's a bit of a glitch right now. We're working on resolving that, but there are other options. If you want to support our work, you can also earmark it for activities in Jerusalem or anything else. And anyone who wants to get more involved or to host a parlor meeting or a community event where we can talk about some of the issues in which we are active, I encourage you to get in touch with me. We'll set something up. I've just come back from Toronto. Before that, I was in New Jersey. Before that, I was in New York, and I will be in Detroit at some point in the near future. And have gun will travel, as they say. Call me and I'm there. We hope that the people who see this webinar, who found it instructive in any way, will share it with others. It will be up on our YouTube later this evening. And please spread the word. Encourage people to educate themselves, either through our website or our various communication streams. We do have a couple of minutes now for questions. If there are any questions, you can use the facility at the bottom of the page to raise your hand or write it in the chat. And I'll try to address any specific questions you have, either about today's webinar or other activities of Regavim. John, are there questions in the...
There are questions in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to try to get to them here. Let's see. Hold on. I don't see where the chat is on this page. There it is. Got it. All right. Let's see. We have there are Arab houses built not only within the Har Hazitim cemetery perimeter, some are built over graves. Does Regavim have any plans to raise questions about these structures? Yes. And a question about Regavim being targeted by the U.S. administration. Those are both very good questions. One of the areas that we are looking at is, well, we have an issue with more than one cemetery in Jerusalem. There are cemeteries, other cemeteries that you've probably never heard of that are Hekdesh land, and they are being encroached upon and built on aggressively by Arabs. And part of that problem, part of the problem with the Mukhtar Protocol was just that. But we are very actively pursuing some of these cases in court. And yes, we are. The short answer is yes. And the longer answer, I'd be happy to discuss privately. Is Regavim targeted by the U.S. administration? Not yet. So one never knows with the current administration who they will sanction. Anyone who's interested in figuring out all of this, I would recommend reading the executive order 14115. It is incredibly vague. It is incredibly general, and essentially allows the American government to sanction, well, not even the government, the president of the United States, to issue sanctions against anyone who doesn't agree with the president of the United States. In other words, anyone that they consider to be disruptive to the process that they want to see happen, i.e. a two-state solution in which the Palestinian Authority is empowered. We don't agree, and therefore, at any time, we could be considered a destabilizing force, and we could be sanctioned. But to the best of our knowledge, that hasn't happened yet, and we hope it does not. We don't believe we are a destabilizing force. We believe we are a stabilizing force. But we will continue to act within the law and with the law. So I don't know. Who can we push in the government to get to deal with these issues? We are pushing everyone in the government. And I can tell you that we have one of the most active divisions of Regavim is our parliamentary affairs division. We have very, very talented people sitting with members of Knesset every single day of the week, participating in Knesset hearings, convening Knesset debates. We are founding and convening members of the Land of Israel caucus in the Knesset, and we very often will initiate hearings in various Knesset committees to deal with these issues. We have seen a lot of success recently. Many of the things that we have been lobbying for are actually happening. More on that in additional webinars. I hope that by the end of next week, we will be sending out a summary of our 2023 activities, although it's quite late for that. We usually send it out at Tu B'Shvat. Around Tu B'Shvat time, we were a little bit busy with the war. So we've kind of caught up and put together an overview of some of our successes and some of our failures in 2023. And some of the areas that still require our attention. So if you're interested in receiving that, make sure you're on our mailing list. Everyone on our monthly newsletter mailing list will receive that update. And then around Tu B'Shvat time, God willing, the 2024 update already will follow very, very rapidly. one more question here. It seems inconceivable that any Israeli government would allow all this illegal building to take place. Why do we need to beg the government to act? Well, part of the answer, it's the same answer as our activities, not in Jerusalem, but all through Judea and Samaria, and in many cases elsewhere within Little Israel. Part of the answer was something that I showed you in an earlier slide, and that was those European Union symbols on the sides of the illegal structures. When the Europeans fund, support, and protect those buildings, Israel has to think twice before actually opening in a full-scale war against our supposed allies, for the same reason that Israel is doing other unimaginable things at the moment, because our main ally, the United States of America, is insisting that we do them, even though they are counterproductive, prolonging the war, providing aid to a US designated terror organization, and essentially helping those terrorists kill us, but we're doing it anyway. And at a certain point, the government of Israel has a lot of things to weigh in its calculation of cost and benefit. And what we try to do at Regavim is to create public awareness and pressure, and to work also with parliamentarians to make that, to shift that cost benefit equation, meaning when the government of Israel knows that enough people are objecting or will not stand for or will not vote for a government that is doing these things or allowing these things to be done, then we will eventually see a shift in government policy, or we will see more and more people voting for politicians who agree with us that these things are outrageous. So it seems inconceivable. It is conceivable, unfortunately, and that's exactly why we exist. Regavim is probably the only organization that I know of that prays to become redundant, to become unnecessary, to have someone else, i.e. the government of Israel, do our job, do its job. And so we pray that that will happen. But until it does, it's not inconceivable, but it's something that we have to work to change. I thank you all for your attention, and I think we're going to wrap it up here. One more question, an important one. Does Regavim have representatives in the US to work with the US government? No, we do not. This is an area in which we would like to become involved. We, meaning the International Division, which at the moment consists more or less of me. Yes, we are interested. And if anyone watching this evening has any ideas about the best way to approach that, that would be very, very helpful, something that we are eager to get rolling, that we have not done in the past. Thank you all. In Israel, already on Thursdays, we wish people Shabbat Shalom. So I will certainly do that. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. I hope that the next time we meet, we will have reports of tremendous successes, not only in protecting Jerusalem, but in a more general picture. We pray for good news and the return of all of our hostages, for the full and speedy recovery of all those that have been injured, and for the strength to turn national crisis into national rebirth. Thank you all.